All right, I understand we have a verdict. I know we have lots of folks that are interested in the outcome of this case here. I've also heard at least 6 Amber Alerts while I was in the back buzzing in here. So if that happens, I'll just ignore it and pretend I didn't hear it. I want everyone to just understand that the jury's been working diligently on this case for the last 4 weeks of trial and for the last several days of deliberation. I don't want any outbursts one way or the other. If you don't think you'll be able to restrain yourself one way or the other, then you need to step out. All right, anything else we need to take up before we bring the jurors in? All right, we have our 2 alternates. All right, go ahead and bring them. Well, we have 4, but only two are coming.
Michael, did you notice, I couldn't even get it out of my mouth, and you said it before I did. First thing I noticed when they all stood up for the very first time, Melody Farris stood up for the jury to come in the courtroom.
Yeah, she hadn't been doing it. That was the word from our own Matt Johnson, who had been in the courtroom. He did explain that it wasn't the most formal courtroom, and we've certainly seen that from the judge, not the most formal judge we've ever seen, but we both felt like it was not a good idea to stand, even though maybe it was okay. And the attorney explained it, saying that in his mind, he told her not to stand because we're all peers. And so it was an interesting decision by him.
That is, but I will tell you, it's now been clarified in my ear. When we're going live, I made an assumption they were standing for the jury. They were not. They were standing for the judge. So she does stand for the judge. That's what we just witnessed. Now we're waiting on the jury to come in. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for correcting me. And as we're waiting for the jury to come in, now we can see the hands of those standing behind her, and she's not standing. And I thought when the defense attorney said it's a jury of her peers, we want to be on the same level, that's why she doesn't stand. I don't know if that's going to strike well with people or not, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. This jury's been deliberating on day 4 now, looking at the evidence, listening to these calls we've been sharing, Michael, and as a result of all this, we simply are waiting to hear what the verdict is.
Yeah, my understanding is, and like you said, I see people standing behind her, so they must be coming in now, this jury of 12. They were waiting for alternates. They have shown up as well, so we know they're in the courtroom. Again, to me, right now, she looks very concerned, as anyone would be under the circumstances. Just reminding folks. All right, let's get back in the courtroom.
Yes, sir. And is it signed by you as foreman? Yes, sir. All right. If you'll hand it to the bailiff, then I'll review it, and then I'll hand it back to you. If you'll hand that back to the foreman. All right, sir, as foreman, I'm going to have you stand and publish your verdict. You can do that just by saying, "We, the jury," and then to each count, say, "We find the defendant guilty or not guilty," as to each count.
All right. We, the jury, as to the count 5, we find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, as to count 4, find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, as to count 3, we find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, as to count 2, find the defendant guilty. And we, the jury, as to count 1, find the defendant guilty.
All right, we'll hand it back to the bailiff. Madam Bailiff, you just show it to counsel. All right, anything y'all want to take up?
No. Oh, we would ask you to poll the jury.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the defense has asked that you be polled. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. We're going to run through each one of you. If you still remember your original jury number, if you don't, we'll give you some prompting. But if you'll stand up, we will then I'll ask you a series of questions, and then I'll move to the next juror. After you see me do it twice, you'll understand what we're doing. All right? So, Mr. Bailiff, Mr. Clerk, if you'll call the juror.
Number 3.
All right, ma'am. Is that your verdict?
Yes, sir.
Was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, sir.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, sir.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes, sir.
All right, you can be seated.
Number 7.
All right, sir, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, next.
Number 14.
All right, ma'am, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, what?
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes.
All right, you may be seated.
Number 28.
All right, sir, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Number 40.
That's me. All right. Sir, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, Your
And
Honor.
is that still your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Number 41.
Ma'am, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes.
All right, next.
Number 48.
All right, ma'am, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can be seated.
Number 50.
All right, ma'am, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, sir.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, sir.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes, sir.
All right, next.
Number 60.
All right, sir, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can be seated.
Number 65.
All right, sir, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is it still your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can be seated.
Number 71.
All right, sir, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes, sir.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes, sir.
And is that still your verdict?
Yes, sir. Number 79.
All right, sir, was that your verdict in the jury room?
Yes.
Was the verdict agreed to by you?
Yes,
And is it still your verdict?
it is.
All right, you may be seated. That's all of our jurors. All right, anything else?
That's all, Judge.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that ends your service in this case. I want to thank you for your service. You are now free to go about your day and your lives and look up anything you want to about the case, talk to anyone about the case, or not, as you choose. That is completely up to you and how you want to handle that. There are the media folks have reached out and want to talk to you. The way we're going to do that is I have some packets of information from them that I'm going to give you in just a moment. Before y'all leave the area, you are free to stay and talk to anyone you want to. You are also free to leave and not talk to anyone. There are many folks that would like to have an opportunity to talk to you. Again, that is completely up to you. And whether you want to talk to the lawyers, any of the family members, or the media is completely up to you. And they will make themselves available. I'm sure the media folks will be out the front door. If you want to talk to them, I'm going to direct them not to bother you if you want to go out the back door and go to your car and leave the premises. All right, so with that, y'all can be excused to the jury room. Yeah, and if the alternates, y'all can step out. I'm going to give y'all that same information. So if y'all step out with the bailiffs, y'all can come through. They're going to want you to walk around. All right, y'all want to schedule sentencing?
Judge, let's go ahead and schedule it for sooner rather than later
All right.
due to
Well, let them step out.
yeah.
We can shoot for the first week of December, second week of December. I'll talk with Tracy. I have jury trials scheduled the week before Thanksgiving. We might can do, I know I have a conference the first full week of December, so. Second week. So we will reach out to y'all and have a scheduling conference on when the best time to do sentencing would be. We'll try to get that scheduled for you. All right. But ma'am, you will be remanded into custody after you've been convicted. Your bond is deemed insufficient at this time. You'll be taken into custody and await sentencing. All right. All right. Y'all can take her in the back. If y'all need a chance to talk to her, y'all keep her here for a little bit so that the attorneys can talk to her if they need to.
Still with us, criminal defense attorneys Jack Rice and national trial attorney Michael Jaffer. Michael, let me start with you. I'm surprised. Again, I'm surprised it's guilty across the board, but that's because I felt like Scott, equal reasonable doubt for me in my mind. And I know, Michael, you've been pretty vocal about the same. What do you think now?
I'm stunned. In the prior block, Jack Rice said that he's puzzled to see how they went from being hung and so quickly having a verdict, and now they actually have a unanimous verdict. I think I'm really riveted for somebody to study this jury and poll them and interview them. So how, in that jury room, how did you guys get from being hung to being unanimous? And how, again, what weighed more for you guys? Was it the phone calls, or was it the fact that it's an impossibility to physically murder a 300-pound, 6'5" deadweight human being and move them from the basement? There was blood stains on the basement steps that were wiped out. That was part of the prosecution's case. How did somebody do that when they're 120 pounds with scoliosis in their back that could barely move even her own body weight? I'm 200 pounds. I can't even bench 250 pounds, right? Even my own body weight, right? How was she able to move somebody who's 3 times her body weight without tons of help, or not, or just not do it? It puzzles me. I really want to know. I was riveted. I had heart palpitations waiting for that verdict to be read. I'm 1,000 miles away. I don't know any of these people. I was very riveted by this case from day one. And it just makes me think, Judge Ashley, when William Shakespeare wrote his tragedies in his plays, he didn't need to use his imagination. He just looked at human tragedies of people he probably knew. You're looking at this woman in a courtroom. She's in the same courtroom as her children. 2 of them look just like her, and she blamed them for the murder of their father, her husband, and they blamed her for the murder of their father, her husband. And they're in the courtroom together, and this is a human tragedy of epic proportions, but it happens all the time. And we have the privilege of knowing about it and seeing it on Court TV. I'm riveted, and I'm really puzzled. I don't think I'm smart enough to know the answers to these questions, or why the jury was able to go from being hung. I'm completely aghast. I don't know. I want to know. Smarter minds than me will one day tell me and will teach me. I don't think I have the intellect necessary to answer this riddle. It's a riddle for me, maybe for somebody else it's not.
It was really an incredible moment. The drama of waiting, and you and I commented on it. She started taking off her earrings, knowing that she was going to turn that over because she had been free going up to this point. Now she was going to be taken into custody and probably in the custody for a very, very long time. She is facing life in prison with or without the possibility of parole. Jack Rice, I want to get your reaction specifically to this idea that this jury went back. They came forward and said they were hung, and then came back 2.5 hours later, and they had a decision, and it went against the defendant.
Michael, it's clear that what they were asking for was they wanted to hear that tape. That one singular tape, which was about, was he in the burn pile and when she said that. That mattered to them. There was some hesitation for a whole series of reasons, but clearly this is one of the things that they're always asking for. When you're deliberating, there is this very big question that, if we had ciphers, if we had artificial intelligence making these decisions, maybe we could tease it all out and we could say, okay, based upon this piece of evidence and this piece of evidence and this piece of evidence, we weighed it in this fashion. Hence, AI could tell us that. But as human beings, it changes everything.
It does. It does. Jack Rice, Michael Jaffer sticking around with us. Thank you for that. Coming up, more reaction from the Farris guilty verdict. Plus, Court TV's Matt Johnson joins us live from outside the courthouse. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We're both here today giving you your front row seat to justice, and we are in Georgia this afternoon, where defendant Melody Farris was just found guilty on all counts in the burn pile murder trial.
The jury found the 64-year-old mother of four guilty of fatally shooting her husband, prominent Atlanta attorney Gary Farris, and then burning his remains in their yard. Joining us live now is Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Live in Cherokee County, you are inside that courtroom. We know guilty on all 5 counts across the board. Tell us about the courtroom while you were there.
Emotions were running high in that courtroom just leading up to the reading of the verdict. It was postponed and pushed out a little bit after hearing that we had a verdict reached by this one-time hung jury because some of the alternates were still making their way to the courthouse and also some of the family members. And then completely quiet when the Farris children walked in. They sat in the gallery in front of me. Chris and Scott Farris. Scott Farris in particular, who was pointed at by this defense team as the alternate suspect. They said that he was the one that committed the murder. He broke down in tears, almost wailing. He was being comforted in that gallery. And then Chris also broke down after looking at his brother. But this is the very first time that we saw this defendant stand for her jury when this was read.
We, the jury, as the count 5, we find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, as to count 4, find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, as to count 3, we find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, as to count 2, find the defendant guilty. And we, the jury, as to count 1, find the defendant guilty.
Guilty on all counts, Melody Farris, who has been out on bail ever since she was arrested in 2019. Remember, her husband murdered by her. She's now convicted killer in 2018. She looked stunned in standing there in the courtroom when this was read, but it really didn't take effect and see a change in her until the 3rd verdict came down of guilty. The jury members, they didn't look at her when they walked into the courtroom, but they did each time that they were polled by Judge Cannon that this is their true verdict reached by them, and they still stick behind it.
All right, Matthew, what is next for Melody Farris? We heard a sentencing date was chosen. What happens now?
What happens now is she's going to be remanded into custody. Again, she has been out on bail. She has been staying with a family friend before leading up to trial, where her daughter, Amanda, testified on her own behalf. She had been living with her. This murder really split the whole family. So she is going to be evaluated, and then a sentencing date will come down at a later time. Remember, she faces life behind bars without the possibility of parole for being a convicted killer here in the state of Georgia. But I wanted to add one more thing. The jury foreman, I noticed earlier today when this jury was at an impasse, when they said that they were a hung jury, and then they went to lunch right after being sent back to the deliberating room by the judge. It was the jury foreperson who I saw with a heavy heart, and he was the one pacing in front of the courthouse over and over again. That's going to be forever burned in my mind with this trial.
Wow, fascinating color of the courtroom and insight. You know, this jury, they dug in deep, and we now know all 5 counts guilty. They found Melody Farris guilty. Thank you so much, Matt Johnson. We'll look forward to hearing more. We understand there'll be a press conference at 5 p.m., and certainly we'll be covering that as well. Still with us also, criminal defense attorney Jack Rice, national trial attorney Michael Jaffer. Jack, I have to focus on her a minute because you've sat next to defendants, all 3 of you have, when they've been found guilty. She was taking her jewelry off, and then finally she had her hands over her face, and I felt like she was in shock. She was in shock, and then it hit her.
Your Honor, I've been on the wrong side of juries in murder cases, and you sit there, and even the attorneys themselves are frequently in shock by this because you've been working on this for 2 years. This becomes all-consuming. You talk about it at the dinner table to your significant other about what's going on as the case is progressing. It becomes very personal. And in fact, that's what we do. And so what happens is we start to take on all that is our clients. And I've had clients turn to me in the midst of all of it when it's done and say, what just happened? Not understanding where we are, to realize the emotion that comes at somebody where they just go blank. And then to have a deputy come up behind them and grab their elbow and pull them to their feet and start to handcuff them as they look at you in wonder, in confusion. This is a brutal process. And for people who've never been inside of a courtroom when we're talking about this, and you hear people wailing behind you, and these are the family members and those who have lost so much. You see jurors wailing in the box. You see judges trying to keep it together as professionals, but we're all human beings. We all have to deal with what this means, what it feels like, and that is the reality of this system. So for those who think that this is just an everyday thing, that this is just what we do, they misunderstand just how intense this process truly, truly is.
Yeah, and it was intense, obviously, for everyone, Michael Jaffer, because as you heard from our own Matt Johnson, Scott, the son who they were pointing the finger at, broke down in the gallery. This is a crime that broke this family apart. And if you buy the defense's story, this should make those kids happy, right? Because they wanted her to be convicted so they could get more out of the father's death. Again, you know, the jury decided that that wasn't the story, but I would love to get your reaction.
This is earth-shattering, dramatic moves. I won't be able to top what Jack did in terms of the emotional aspect of this thing, right? I remember the first trial I ever lost. It was a misdemeanor case. It was larceny, right? It was a bench trial. It wasn't even a jury trial. The first case I lost was a bench trial for larceny with the maximum sentence being 90 days, right? I still remember. It was in 2007, right? I still remember it, and it was emotional, and that was nothing, right? He's right. These are just absolute. I remember when I was a young attorney, we were working on a big case, and we won it, right? I went out to celebrate, and he went home. He said, "I want to tell you something. You're going to be depressed for a couple of weeks." And I told him, "Well, why? We just won the case." He said, "Here's why. We've been working on this case for a year. We just won the case. The case is over. You had a sense of purpose in your life, and it was this case. For a year, you had other things you were working on, but you immersed yourself into this case, you and the team. Your sense of purpose is gone for at least a good couple of weeks until we get into a bigger case, into another case." And he was right. It was I was loafing around. It was difficult, right? And then what Matt Johnson just said, and that guy's tenacious, by the way. He's given me lots of insight about this case that I didn't have. He said, "I just learned right now that one of the jury foreperson was pacing. It's going to live with that person for the rest of his life," right? He was pacing because they had to wait. And the fact that this jury was hung earlier today, to me, it boggles my mind in terms of the human tragedy of it. And she was pointing a finger at her son, who looks just like her, right? And there's going to be checks administered to the son because a probate attorney is going to bring him in and say, "Now that your mom has been found guilty, these parts of the estate go from her to you. And you were responsible for her getting convicted, and you are responsible for destroying." I'm not saying he did anything wrong. I'm just saying he's responsible for the destruction of their family. I'm not saying he's wrong for that. It's a fact. It's a fact that had it not been for him testifying against his mom, I don't know if she would have been convicted. But the point is the human tragedy element of this. And then Michael also reminding me that she was taking off her earrings after it kind of sunk in. That made me sad. It really made me sad. There's two universes. There's a universe where she did this and the universe where she didn't do it. We technically don't know which universe we live in. Neither does the jury. Nobody knows, right? She knows and Scott knows, right? But in either universe, it's a tragedy. And if we live in the universe where she did not do this, that's an even bigger tragedy.
In my mind, Judge, turns to Amanda, who took the stand, was extremely emotional, and she stood by her mom, was the only one, and, you know, it split the family. She didn't even speak to the other kids. And, you know, she was betrayed on the stand when they told her about a lie she had told. I wonder how she feels now. She said she just wanted the system to play out and that justice be served.
Yeah.
Well, justice is her mom going to jail.
I can't imagine. And I was really surprised about Scott being wailing, breaking down and wailing, because I too felt like if you believed just how he was on the stand and what they were saying, that he'd be okay with his mother being convicted because she did it, yet he fell apart.
This
you just
is
never
years
know.
of emotion, though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
never know.
Years,
And
exactly,
it's your family. It's your
exactly.
family at
I mean,
the end of the
he's been holding
day.
that in, I'm sure.
Ooh.